Great. Welcome back, everyone, to Teach, the channel where we talk about all things teaching. This is officially episode number 3 of a series of interviews that we are conducting with people in the online teaching industry. So we've been interviewing a few teachers that have started their careers within the past, let's say, 18 to 24 months. We've been sharing their experience, the good and the bad. Today, we're going ahead with that same stream of interviews, interviewing yet another teacher that I've had the privilege of helping to launch his career in online teaching. In about 2 weeks' time, just a bit of a plug-in before we get this interview going. We're going to be doing an interview with a tax expert within the South African context. A question that I've been getting a lot lately is, how does tax work for us online teachers in South Africa? And so we're going to have an expert on that's been doing my tax personally as an online teacher. He's obviously got good knowledge about the tax regulations in South Africa, and he'll be sharing a bit of advice in terms of how you can position yourself well as an online teacher in terms of paying tax and all the rest. So with that said, I want to bring on our guest for today, Kobus Botha. Kobus, how are you doing today?
Hi, Zander. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me on the interview.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to join us for today. So, Kobus, when I believe it was 2022 that you made the career change into online teaching, right?
Actually, I started in April 2021. So
April 2021.
Yes, okay. if I'm not mistaken. So yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Good. So you're now going on the 3 years of being in the online teaching world. Is that
yes.
right?
Sorry, no, I think it is 2 years. So it must be 2022. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. In my mind, 2022 makes a lot more sense as well.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks for being here. So, Kobus, we're going to dive right into it. Maybe as a sort of warm-up question, would you mind giving the audience a bit of your background before you got into online teaching? What were you doing before, and what led you to make the decision to transition into online teaching?
Sure. So I was actually in sales in a few different environments in my life, but the most recent one was in the outdoor industry. So I was selling off-road caravans and camping equipment and things like that here in Bloemfontein. Also by kitting out off-road vehicles with accessories and all sorts of off-road equipment. That was great because that's really forming part of my passions. But I reached a stage in my life where I felt upset because I wasn't making a difference in people's lives. And I started to reach out to people, talking to people, and I met up with one of my friends and I asked him for some advice. And he really thought about it, and he mentioned the world of online teaching. And I've never really considered it, but once I thought about it and he introduced me to you, Zander, and I chatted to you and I thought, this can really be a next step for me and a new phase in my life that will work. So yes, I'm very happy.
Correct. And so when you were sort of guided into that direction, you obviously started with your TEFL certificate and you completed the mentorship program. Tell us a bit more about your journey of getting your first job. How long did it take? Was it an easy process? Was it a difficult process? What was that like?
So I think the most difficult part for me was, in fact, the studying for the TEFL certificate, because I was still working at that time. I think I started in February and I completed the TEFL course end of March. Middle of March, I think. And I started, I applied to Preply, which was my first online platform. And I think it was about a month and a half until I got my first student. I started at a very low rate. And yes, and then I started to get students and I built up my hours.
What was your starting hourly rate on Preply? Do you still remember?
I remember I started at $2. I still
Wow.
don't know if it was a big mistake, but I got a lot of students and I quickly built up my hours and I quickly jumped up to $5. And I actually I stick with $5 for quite a few months until
Mhm.
I lifted it up more than that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so started at $2, huge influx of students, bumped it up to $5 an hour, and I assume then the booking slowed down probably a little bit, but probably not too much. What's your hourly rate today?
14 $14.
$14. Okay, so it's been a good journey to $14. So tell us a little bit more about once you started teaching online. So you said Preply was your first job. Have you recently gotten any other jobs? Started working for other companies?
Yes. So I've been on Preply. I'm still on Preply. That's still my most active platform. And then I actually got two private students
Hmm.
that I was busy with that for many months. And then I only started on italki. I actually applied on italki the same time. I applied for Preply, but the positions was always closed for online English teachers. And this one time I just opened up italki and I saw the platform is open and I continued my application on there and got accepted. So now I'm on there. I've got about 3 students on there at the moment.
Hmm.
This was actually about 3 months ago, I think. And
Gotcha. Yeah.
I recently I started on Pulpfish as well, which is the
Mhm.
iOS and Android platform.
Yeah.
And I'm very new to that. I only got one trial lesson at the
Hmm.
moment yet. So I'm still learning that as I go along.
Yeah, it's interesting on italki, and I think you and I had this conversation a while back. But italki was actually on a bit of a hiring freeze for quite some time. I believe it was probably almost the whole last year, 2023. They were not. We had a lot of teachers saying that italki told them that they're not taking on new English teachers. So and I'm
Yes.
very happy to see that they are hiring new teachers. That also obviously means that they're getting a lot of new students coming in as well. But with that said, okay, so you're on Preply or on italki, and then starting out on Palfish as well. Um, what has been sort of your first impressions when you started teaching on Preply specifically? What were your first impressions of the industry?
So first impressions definitely was I was very scared because this is a new platform and quite ironic enough, I hate technology. I don't like to be on computers all day, all the time. But because this might be a new business and a new career, it's it's actually okay because I'm separating the technology into my work life, and once I check out at the end of the day, I'm done. I'm done with technology, so I then try to be as little as possible on the phone, and I'm never on the computer after work. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
Hmm.
But I think it was very exciting for me in the same sense as well. Talking to especially kids, it's really fun to have lessons with them and to see that you are making a difference in their lives. That's actually the biggest pleasure for me, and to see
Hmm.
a smile at the end of the day, because the youngsters in the beginning of the lesson, they're not always excited about the lesson, but after the lesson they like, wow, this was amazing, and they're very happy, and then they can't wait to see you again.
Yeah.
So that really makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, and that's obviously a sign that you're doing a good job if you can take a, because generally for teachers, and I've found this a lot of times at the beginning of the lesson, my kids students are very excited, but then I'm very exhausted, so I'm not doing a good job, and at the end of the lesson they're like, can we just end this? So well done for that. But uh, your current students on Preply italki, are they mostly kids, mostly adults, or a mix of both?
It's definitely a mix. So my youngest student, I started off, he was 5 years old. He couldn't speak English one word. Now he's 6, and we can actually have a conversation
Crazy.
after a year. So it's very cool. My oldest student, I guess he is just under 60, in his late 50s.
Wow.
And then I had another Israeli student, which were definitely in her 60s. Yes. So yeah.
Yeah.
After the war started, she actually just paused her
Yeah.
subscription because of uncertain times.
Of course. Yeah. Earlier, you mentioned that you have, I believe, 3 private students. Tell us how you got them.
So that is actually people, with I talk Preply, they don't want to lose if they can't book the lesson. They don't want to lose those hours at the end of the month if they didn't book it. So it's actually students that contact me and ask me if they can please have the lessons privately, and they can just pay me as they go along. It's like a pay-as-you-go service,
Yeah.
So if they can have a lesson, they'll book a lesson and pay for the lessons individually, and that actually works for them very well.
Yeah. So, have you been able to figure out sort of what kind of system you would prefer? Because I've also had a few students, like referrals from existing students that I teach on freelance platforms, and then they would refer family members or friends or colleagues to take lessons with me. And then generally those people I take on as private students. But then obviously that means for you as a teacher, you've got to figure out the payment, how that's going to happen. You need to figure out a price. There's obviously no commissions involved. You've got to obviously find your own platform like Zoom or Skype to teach on. What are some of the systems that you've put in place that you think, if I get another private student, I would like them to pay me in this way, to schedule in this way, and to have the lessons in this way?
That's a very good question. So the safest for me is to, when I get referrals like that, the first platform, it depends on what they want to do. If they only want to do conversation, then I prefer them to go over to italki, because they don't have any lessons on there. If they want to do lessons, then I tell them to go over to Preply, because I really love Preply's lesson materials. It's awesome. And then I work through those lessons with them, because I don't know them very well. I think it's the safest option for both of us. I'm certain of the income, and it's good lesson materials that I can work through with them. And I talk you with the conversation, having nice conversations on there, and there is a backup and a support system if there's any other problems.
Gotcha. Talk a little bit more about Preply's material. So obviously, I've been teaching on Preply for just about 3 years now. I remember about probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was one time when I looked at one of the lesson plans. But this is also a question I get asked a lot about freelance platforms supplying the lesson materials. How good is Preply's material? What is it like? Is it appropriate for conversation, or does it go deeper than that?
It's much deeper than only conversation. So what is nice about it, you start off with some key vocabulary words that you go through, and then you check with them if they understand the vocabulary, and that normally leads to also conversation starters when you go through these vocabulary words. Then you go over to a listening exercise where they need to listen to a dialogue, and then there's multiple choice questions, 5 questions afterwards. Then there's some spelling. They need to actually do spelling with the words, choosing the right words. There's a writing exercise which I normally don't do, or they also don't want to do the writing exercise. But then they've got at the end of the lesson a picture discussion with it depends on what material you do. For the kids, it's normally 8 pictures with short questions. For the bigger ones, it's 4 pictures with 2 questions on each picture. which you can easily have a conversation for half an hour on those 4 pictures.
Yeah.
So it's a nice variety of things that you do.
And what kind of topics, lesson topics, do they have for adults on Preply?
There's from business to travel to popular phrases, animals, daily routines, anything you can imagine. It's on there.
Gotcha. And what about the materials you use for your students on italki?
Oh, so those lesson materials I gathered over the course of time. That is from eTEFL and some other things that I've sourced personally myself. And another thing that I also like to use is Engu. It's an online platform where you can do daily news topics. So if you go to the most recent topics, it's got very interesting topics that you can talk about, and some very relevant to the students' own countries. So you learn to get to know your student, and then you know what type of articles will be interesting for them to read.
Yeah.
Then you go through that vocabulary, the reading article, and the questions and discussion afterwards. It's brilliant.
Engu, I use Engu a lot as well. And what I like about them is they actually have current events as topics that they have literally put in article form, which is not long. I think generally like 3 paragraphs. They have a vocabulary list from the article. They've got some discussion questions at the bottom as well. And it's free, which is absolutely amazing. So that's definitely a good website to visit for free teaching materials, especially for conversational lessons. I fully agree with you. Kobus, share with us maybe one of your high points and low points in the teaching industry.
Okay, so definitely some of my high points is to see a face of gratitude on the other side of the world. When the people are really like, wow, this was so amazing, thank you so much, and to see their smiles at the end of the lesson, always a high point. Low points, bad financial month. If it was a bad teaching month, then you really start to question, was this the right choice to do? But the next month, it's better again.
Yeah. How many hours per week do you have available for teaching?
Zander, it depends. So my hours are open from 8 o'clock to 5:30, but I average between 4, let's say 4 lessons per day at the moment.
Yeah.
So that is what I can tell you about that.
Okay. And what would be your goal? Would your goal be to maintain 4 to 5 hours per day, increase your rate and earn more, or are you actually looking for new students to get you up to, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours a day?
I would like to be busy 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. I don't teach on Saturdays and Sundays. For me, that's family time, and I don't compromise on that. And so, yeah, I think if I can get 6 students per day, that will be sufficient for our income.
Yeah. So you're probably looking at an hour or 2 on top of what you're already teaching, and then you will be where you want to be. Gotcha.
Yes.
Good. Kobus, maybe as a final question, some of your goals for online teaching in this year. I know we've said now that you want to get your hours up to about 6 per day. Any other goals that you have for 2024?
I think, yes, I do have goals. I actually try to set not as many goals as possible, but realistic goals that I can achieve. I want to have a stressless income. I don't want to worry about, paying everything at the end of the month. So if I can get those 2 hours extra a day, I will be definitely at that point. And the primary goal is to spend as much time as possible with my family and do as many outdoor activities as possible with them.
Yeah.
So, and Yes, and the online teaching, I think that it makes that possible, because I don't have to submit a leave form anymore to an employer and
Yeah.
asking them politely to please approve the request. I
Yeah.
can just take the day off on a Friday if I want to, and or a Monday. For example, I've got the Cape Town cycling tour coming up in March. I'm taking the
Mm.
day off on Friday, going
Yeah.
to go to Cape Town, and I don't have to ask permission for that. And for me,
Yeah.
that is, it's one of the biggest perks for me for online teaching.
Yeah, exactly. And if needed, I mean, you can do that on short notice, which is
Yes,
the best. If you've got a family emergency, it's so flexible, which really makes it incredible for sure.
yes, and the students are very understandable.
Yeah,
They understand, and it's not a problem for them if you need to reschedule for whatever reason.
exactly. Fully agree. Well, Kobus, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time sharing with us. And I'm sure we normally have some people afterwards contacting us and asking, can I please have the teacher's number? So I'll maybe put some people in touch with you that maybe want advice or something like that. But thanks for taking the time here. For everyone watching, whether you're watching it live or the recording, I want to sort of remind you every Monday afternoon we run interviews like this. Next week, we'll actually have Anthony sharing his story. And then the week after that, we're going to have the tax professional on to talk to us a bit about how to navigate your way through paying tax in South Africa as an online teacher. But with that said, thanks everyone. Thanks, Kobus. Really appreciate your time. And I wish everyone a great week. Thanks so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Zander. Have a great evening.